Today we're going to cover a very basic metal coating application tip of dry brushing copper B over a rigid foam part. Now to start with, we'll need to prepare our rigid foam part with primt-it primer. Now in previous videos we've used an HVLP spray gun to apply it, but we want to show here that you can also use a standard chip brush to apply it. Now you want to be very careful not to get little hairs of your chip brush transferring to your part, but overall primt-it applies very well just with a regular paintbrush, a roller, or even a foam brush. Works very well for application here. Now I usually apply 2 light coats of the primt-it primer to a part like this before proceeding with any of the paint. And it's also critical anytime you're working with a primer like this that you allow the primer to cure. Primt-it requires about 3 hours to cure before you apply any paint over it. After that time, you're ready to apply any paint or metal coating over the top. Now here we're going to apply a base coat of black spray paint just out of a regular rattle can. We're just using some flat black paint to coat our piece. And I just want that as an undercoat when I start to dry brush the copper B on. Now once that's dry, we're ready to apply some copper B. And as you can see from my little jar of copper B, we get a lot of mileage out of this. And all I'm going to use for this demonstration here is just the copper B in the lid. Just a very small amount is all we need to get the effect we want. What we're going for here is a very simple technique of just a light dry brushing of the copper over the entire surface of the piece. Now we're not going to be applying any patina over the top, so we just want a very minimal amount of the metal coating spread across the surface. And it does take some practice to get just the right amount on there. A lot of times, as you might have seen in some of our other videos, I use a piece of cardboard to dispense some of the paint onto, just so I get a very small amount and don't get too much on the brush so that I don't wind up over applying it. This kind of a painting effect like this dry brushing effect with the metal coatings, works well when you use just the minimal amount of paint. So think less is more anytime you take this approach. And we're not going to need to apply 2 coats like we typically do with a metal coating piece where we're adding a patina. Now back to the foam that we used here. Keep in mind this works well over any of the rigid urethanes out there, provided you work with the primt-it primer. That's a great way to prime a urethane cast piece for paint like this. Just make sure it's free of any kind of surface oil or residue before you proceed with the paint. And now our piece is essentially done. If we wanted to, in lieu of patinas, we could also go back over our metal coating surface with some of the colored waxes. And you'll see that in some other videos we have where we use some of the colored waxes like the greens or blacks to add some more contrast to our piece.